join the map. This is Ron Costa broadcasting live from the Mappable USA studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. And folks, today we're going to talk about the importance of business consultants, and I think you're going to find this very, very interesting. But before we get going on that, let's introduce Vicki Hutchmala from the World Token Market. Vicki, how are you doing today?
I'm fabulous today, Ron. It's a beautiful day in Vegas. I think spring has arrived, and we couldn't be happier. And now we've got a podcast with one of our favorite guests, and we're going to talk about making your business successful. I think we should start.
Okay, well, let's get going. Let's introduce again Mike Brette from Small Cap Equity Advisors. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Ron. Thanks a lot.
Great. I'm glad you took the time out again to do a podcast. And as Vicki mentioned, you're one of our favorite guests. We've had you on so many times, and everybody loves it when you're on because you give out the best information. And I think today is going to be a really good show because I think we're going to talk about something that everyone wants to hear if they're a business owner, for sure.
Yeah, actually, I think it's first off, I get a lot of phone calls from people that want to raise capital, but they don't understand. They don't have a clue as to how to get started or why or anything. So I thought maybe we'd cover on this show about companies using an outside consultant to help guide them through the process. And a lot of these companies don't understand there is a process to raising capital. I mean, I get so many phone calls and emails from we need $500,000. We need $1 million. Why? But first you got to ask the questions, for the entrepreneur, why do you need the money? Maybe you could just generate cash flow through sales and you don't need to raise money. So again, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered before the company goes out and starts raising money. And then they have to understand how to raise money, how to find investors, the legal structures, how to comply with security laws. I mean, there's a whole litany of different things that business owners need to be aware of, but you think they would be aware of them or they wouldn't be calling to raise money, but that's all they see are dollar signs, and they don't have a clue about the process.
Yeah, here's the problem with that, though. The elephant in the room with consultants basically is that your qualifications to be a consultant is basically just saying, hey, I'm a consultant, right? I mean, if I just call myself a consultant, if I call myself an expert, that doesn't make me an expert. It doesn't make me know what I'm doing, right? So there's a part of the industry, I think a lot of these business owners say, wow, these guys don't know. How could these guys help me?
Yeah, that's true. But again, it depends on who you're dealing with. You do your research, you have a phone call and, get some insight as to the consultant's abilities. But again, it comes down to delivering. The business owner can try to do it themselves, and they're probably not going to be any better off doing it themselves than working with a consultant for the first time and finding out, how the consultant can help them. I mean, I give a lot of people the initial consultation, maybe 15 minutes at no charge. And if they want to book a 1-hour consultation, I charge them for that. But it's a way of finding out whether, there's a fit. I mean, I get a lot of requests, but sometimes there just isn't a fit. I mean, I don't like the way the person
right.
sounds on the phone. I don't like what they're talking about. I don't like their deal. I mean, and some of them don't like me, because I'm too matter of fact. So, the phone call helps kind of weed everything out on both sides to take care of the comment you made.
Yeah, no, that definitely helps. All right, so you talked about it as a process. Let's go through that then. What's step one, basically?
Yeah, the first step. I mean, they really need to understand the process of raising capital, and I'll get into that in a minute. But like I mentioned at the top of the hour, a lot of companies that call me anyhow, and a lot of them I see on LinkedIn and other social media sites, is they're posting a social media comment saying, we're looking for investors. We need to raise $1 million. And I mean, that's not the way to go about it. First, you have to understand why you're trying to raise the money. I mean, are you trying to build a prototype? Are you trying to do market research? Are you doing a seed round? Are you doing a Series A round, for expansion? I mean, that's part of the process right there, is understanding why you want to raise the money. Number two, once you get through that, it's what's the use of proceeds? I don't know how many people I've asked that question to. What's the use of proceeds? Well, I'm paying myself back first. I put $100,000 in it, and plus I have $500,000 of sweat equity in my business, so I'm going to pay myself back $600,000 before. Oh, wait a minute, buddy. It doesn't work that way. Sweat equity is nothing. It's your business. You should have some sweat in the deal to get it going. And then paying yourself back for any money you might have put in. No, it doesn't work that way. Investors don't want to see their money going to line your pocket to paying expenses or whatever. It should be going to grow the business. So again, that's part of the process of understanding why you're trying to raise money. If you're just trying to raise money to pay yourself back, that's not going to work. If you don't understand why you're trying to raise money, again, seed round, Series A, Series B, if you don't have a correct valuation for your company, how are you going to raise money from an investor? Because you don't really understand how much equity to give up that investor. So those are some of the steps in the process of, raising capital.
When I think of businesses starting off, I think of strategy. And you need to have a strategy regardless of your product, regardless of your service or whatever. And part of strategy is understanding what's ahead, anticipating the possibilities, anticipating the potential, and then being adaptable to things that happen. So if you can know in your mind, this might happen, that might happen, this is what I'll do, this is where I'll go, put together a team of people who can help you do that. But then it's not an overnight success. It's not something that just because you have the passion for what you're doing doesn't mean you know how to do it. And the best thing you can do is hire someone like yourself, Mike, who can take you step by step down the road to make sure that what you're thinking today is going to be a reality tomorrow. And if it's not, what do I do to fix it? I mean, but not very many people can contemplate that in their mind.
Yeah, that's true. And the reason they can't is most of the people trying to raise money are desperate. They have a payroll to make, or, they're trying to make their rent, or, they're just desperate for the money. So they don't really take the time to think through those issues like you raised. And secondly, they're good at, or they think they're good at coming up with a technology or a software or a widget, gadget, whatever it is. They're probably good at that. And so they think that makes them an expert at everything, raising capital, exactly. being their own CPA, being their own attorney, everything, the do-it-yourself mentality, or go to the internet, download some forms, and, I know what I'm doing kind of an attitude. And they don't, like you mentioned, they don't prepare the business side of it for any, problems that might surface. And that all comes into the what a consultant can do to help the business stay focused. I don't know how many deals I get involved with where the focus just isn't there. They're so desperate to raise the money that, they forget, again, about the process. Their business really isn't ready to raise money, and they don't want to hear that. They want to hear that, somebody is willing to put in $500,000 or $1 million because, the founder thinks it's the best thing since sliced bread. And when you give them the reality, when you give them the reality and say, look, you really don't have anything. What you're talking about is out there. Who's your competition? We don't have any competition. Oh, that's the first statement that investors don't want to hear, that the founder doesn't know who his competition is. So again, you're right. I mean, they don't stop to think about all the negative things about operating a business, and they don't think about the positive things that investors want to hear in order to put their money into the deal.
Okay, all right. Well, then, in that case, Mike, when you're looking to get a consultant, then do you hire or do you talk to different consultants based on what you need? Like, for example, you're in the development or planning stage, you're looking for something more sales and marketing wise. Does one consultant take care of all that stuff, or do you have a number of consultants on your staff?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, what I tell people, it depends on what stage you are in your business. If you're contacting me, I'm going to give you advice and assistance in accessing capital. If you're solely interested in sales, marketing, business development, that's a different consultant altogether. So, my first question to somebody, a new client, is, what do you need from me? Well, we need somebody to do engineering. Well, that's not what I do. So that's the first step right there is, and answer your question, and sometimes you have to go to multiple consultants if you, the founder, can't handle those things internally. Now, if you don't have a marketing department, a sales department, internally, yeah, you're going to have to go outside for those services, to get your business to a certain level, because that's what investors are going to look at. They're going to ask, what kind of traction do you have? I don't know how many times I've heard from people raising money, we have a disruptive technology. All right, how many sales, actual cash sales do you have? Well, none. We don't have anything yet. Well, then you don't have a disruptive technology. You have an idea.
Yeah, that's right.
We're a unicorn. We're the next unicorn. Well, wait a minute. A unicorn is $1 billion valuation or more. What's your valuation? Well, we're not there yet, but see, they're so distracted by the things they hear in the media and the things they might read on social media, the internet, that they lose focus as to how important their deal is to investors and how important their deal is to consumers. Is it going to fly? So again, the company needs to focus on what it is that they want from a consultant. And if they can't do all these things internally, they have to reach out to multiple consultants, just like you have to reach out to multiple other professions like a CPA to do your accounting, a lawyer to do your securities filings. You have to go out to different sources. And anybody that tries to be a jack of all trades as a consultant, I think they do a disservice to the client, because not every consultant can do everything. Now, having said that, a consultant can be valuable in directing you to people like a securities lawyer, a CPA, a sales and development specialist, marketing, so you can do business with one consultant for a specific service and then rely on them to direct you through referrals of people they've worked with in the past for other services you might need. And again, that's where the founder tries to wear too many hats and lose focus. They try to do everything themselves, then they neglect the business, and the business never really gets off the ground. The statistics are pretty startling. 65% of the companies trying to raise money never raise money. 65%.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the main reason, they lose focus and they don't know what they're doing and they don't understand the process.
Well, and plus they don't know who their customers are. They haven't figured out, like, I have the best widget, but who's going to buy it? What kind of a person wants this? How do I market it to that person who's going to buy it? And then how am I going to get the money to make it all happen, which is where the consultant comes in, because like you said, they're focused on the wrong thing. They're focused on the end of the journey instead of developing the beginning of the journey so you can make it to the end. And you've got to know who's your customer. You've got to know what do I need to help me?
Yeah, and a lot of people, a lot of founders think, they're geniuses, that they understand just because they came up with some kind of, technology. First off, they think it's the best one out there. It's the only one out there, and it's not. Secondly, they don't really know who they're going to sell to. They don't know the cost of selling to a consumer. They don't understand their profit margin. They think they do when they put together a deck. I don't know how many decks I've reviewed in 30 years being in business, but a deck is the most useless thing that an entrepreneur, a founder can spend their time on. But a lot of them, that's where they spend their money and their time putting a deck together that investors never read. I've read a few, and they all have the same thing. They're all projections. They're all a pipe dream. There's no reality in their deck because they really don't understand the business. All they understand is, look, I've got an idea and I need $500,000 to make it happen. Will you put the money in? Those are their steps. To them, that's the process. And that's not, investors are going to hear that and they're going to just roll their eyes and get up and walk out of a meeting. So there's a process. And, the founder has to understand, are you doing a seed round? What is a seed round? A seed round is to raise enough money to get a prototype, to do some market research, to find out those questions, who my consumer is, what price point do I need to sell, how much, what is my markup on the cost of what I'm doing. That's what a seed round does. A seed round is not for expansion. A seed round is not to go out and hire a bunch of people. That's not what a seed round is. Now you go to a Series A, Series B, Series C, follow-on financings, and then you do a stair step up of, opening up a manufacturing plant, hiring additional engineers and employees, and on and on and on. And that's what you do with growth capital, is do a Series A, B, or C in financing. But again, most of the people that are starting out have an idea. It's not fleshed out. They think they know where they're going. They don't. I see it all the time in my business when people contact me. I had a guy just before we got on the air. I talked with him last year, and, well, I know everything about this. I know that. I got a securities lawyer. I know investment bankers. All right, then why are you calling me? If you have all those, why are you calling me? So we never hit it off. Well, just before we come on the air, I get another message from him that he wants to talk to me. He's got 14 patents. Well, big deal. If you can't get those patents, I haven't talked with him. I just got a text from him about, wanting to set up a call. But again, they fail to understand the importance of a consultant, and they fail to keep focus on what they want to do. The other thing is it gets down to the documentation. I mentioned decks. To me, a deck and a business plan are the most useless documents that a business can have, especially when they're trying to raise money. First off, a business plan and a deck are not the documents you need to raise money. Those are blueprints to show you how you're going to run the business, you as the founder. It's a blueprint. It's a map. Investors don't read business plans. They don't read decks. They're too busy making money and doing what they do as an investor. So the other thing that founders fail to understand is what's the proper documentation to raise money. Well, we've talked about this on the show before. The only two ways to legally raise money, to go out and start soliciting money, you either register with the SEC or you file under one of the exemptions under the Jobs Act, Reg A, Reg D, or Reg CF. That's it. There is no gray area. I get all these comments all the time from people on LinkedIn or referrals that, I'm not trying to spend money. I'm trying to raise money. Well, yeah, okay, but you can't raise money without spending money. You have to comply with state and federal security laws. You just can't put a social media post out there and say, I need investors for $1 million. You can't do that. So again, it gets back to the documentation. Once you go through the other steps we talked about, it gets down to what documentation. And when you open the founder's eyes as to, look, you just wasted $10,000 on a deck, or you wasted $15,000 on putting a business plan together that nobody's going to read. And even if they did read it, they couldn't write you a check to invest because you don't have the proper SEC documents. And they just throw their hands up in the air and, they move on to somebody else. Of course, they fail. They never raise any money. But So again, it goes back to the process that founders just don't understand. There is a process to running a business and raising capital.
Yeah, and then the best part about that is that when you tell them that, then you're the stupid one. Like, oh, yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay, yeah, all right. Well, then, you call the SEC and tell them what you're doing. I got another response through LinkedIn, to one of my posts, and I cited some SEC rules and regulations. The guy said, "Oh, that's a bunch of malarkey." Yeah, well, you call the SEC then. And you find out from the enforcement division if you can do what you say you're going to do, and we'll see what happens. Like, for instance, some people want to form an LLC or a joint venture or a partnership and raise money. They got the false information that if they do an LLC or a joint venture or a partnership, they don't have to do any filings. Well, no, that's wrong. You can violate security laws if you do it wrong. Like in an LLC, for instance, if you have 5 or more members of an LLC, that's a security. Even if you give those members of the LLC, the investors, voting rights, and there's certain other elements that factor in, you're selling these investors a security, and you got to do a Reg D filing. Same with a joint venture or a partnership. So again, there's this misnomer out there, this myth that they don't have to comply with rules and regulations. Well, all right, do battle with the SEC then. That's what I tell them. Go to court with the SEC, and they don't care what you call your offering. You can call it a non-security. They don't care. They define what a security is, and if you don't, file your paperwork, you do the way, you're going to get dragged into court. I mean, you can't. There's no gray areas. What I tell people.
Yeah, then you got to get a consultant who's also a lawyer, right?
Well, or again, like I mentioned earlier, you get a consultant that can bring in a lawyer, that can bring in an accountant, that can bring in a business development specialist, that can bring in a consulting engineer that you may not have on staff because you can't afford it, but you can afford to pay an hourly fee based on whatever money you're going to raise to at least get some insight as to what you're trying to do. So again, that's the role of a consultant, is to help you first off avoid the expense of having a payroll, full-time payroll, when you don't really need it. And if you need access to other professionals, like for instance, I know I've been in business 30 years. I know where all the bodies are buried. I tell people. I know securities lawyers. I know other consultants. I know transfer agents. I know investment banks, family offices, broker-dealers. I've worked with them all over the 30 years, and I've mentioned this on the show before. I've done 250 road shows across the country, in New York, here in California, Austin, Houston, San Francisco, Las Vegas, at the Capitol Grill in Las Vegas, where I would bring in 25 investment bankers for a client to make a presentation to and pitch. I know these people. Now, will they invest in your deal? I don't know. Not until we first off get the process going, put together your tools, and then reach out to these various retail and institutional investors and find out whether it's something they're interested in. There's nobody out there that can guarantee that somebody's going to fund your deal. If somebody gives you a guarantee, run.
Exactly. Exactly. And it all goes back to the first concept of you've got to have the strategy before you act, because even though you think you know everything, you hardly know anything except what you think that your business is going to be, that you have the best thing since sliced bread, but you don't know how to use a knife. So what difference does it make? So that's where consulting, if you can't figure it out yourself, then don't just pretend you know everything. At least be smart enough to find somebody like yourself who can advise and consult and take you down the road to success. Because otherwise, nothing's going to happen except you're going to waste time, you're going to waste money, and you're going to be defeated.
Yeah, and again, a lot of these people trying to raise money, a lot of the founders, they spend too much time on social media, getting the wrong information, instead of calling a consultant or call an attorney direct if you know one. But again, call a consultant and get some free advice initially, and then pay for it later on. Again, raising capital is not free, cheap, or guaranteed. I tell people. So
or quick.
apart from the strategy that we've talked about and the do's and the don'ts, a lot of these people rely on social media for their information, and most of the time it's wrong. I'd say 90% of the information out there is wrong. It's like I had a gentleman call me up last year when SPACs were really hot, and he called me up and said he wants to form a SPAC. He wants to form a SPAC. I said, okay, great. I said, do you know it costs about $2 million for legal fees, accounting fees, and all the fees necessary just to form a SPAC? That's before you raise any money. Well, he said, no. He said, I want to pay all the fees out of the money we raise in the SPAC.
Backward thinking.
Yeah, I said, where did you get that info? Well, I read something on the internet. I said, buddy, it doesn't work that way. So I had to explain it to him, and he thought I was just trying to get him to retain me and everything like that. And I said, look, if you don't have any money, and he says, well, I don't have that kind of money. I said, well, then you have no business doing a SPAC or thinking about a SPAC. I said, the other thing you need to understand about a SPAC is even if you put one together, investors in the SPAC still have the option of asking for their money back. All the money you raise in the SPAC has to go into escrow. You can't use it to pay fees, salaries, operating expenses, or anything. So if an investor wants his money back, you've got to take it out of escrow and refund it. So you can't take any of the money. Well, I didn't know that. Well, see, this is where a consultant can help guide somebody before they, go off on a tangent, whether it's forming a SPAC or a Reg D or a Reg A. You can't really rely on what you read on the internet. I mean, it's a great place to start, but then you have to get into reality mode and figure out, all right, how do I get this actually done? I don't know how to do it. Who can do it for me?
Right.
There you go.
Listen, Mike, a couple of things before we close this out. First of all, getting back to your roadshow thing, we're obviously here in Vegas as well. I go to a lot of investor shows, and very often, to your point, is we see these guys pitching stuff from their PowerPoint deck that you can't even read. The print is so small, and all they really do is just read it off the slide. And I can't think of anything more cringy from an investor perspective. I want to invest in this guy. I mean, these people need consultants at that point because their pitch always falls flat. I'm sure you've seen that a lot, right?
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up here before we do sign off, because that's the role of a consultant, is to help coach and walk the founder through a presentation, multiple presentations, as a practice before they actually get in front of investors. I mean, to your point, investors just roll their eyes when they see a pitch deck come up on a screen where they're the founder is not looking at the investors in the eye. He's looking at the pitch deck and reading from it. Well, if you run off copies and you hand them out, the investors can read them later on. What the investors want to have is a conversation. I tell the founders, get up there and tell a story. Don't use any cue cards. Don't use a PowerPoint. Get up there and tell a story of who you are, what you're doing, where you're going to go, and how you're going to get there. What's your background? Why? How are you going to make money so the investor understands how he's going to make money? Tell a story, engage with the audience, turn it over to questions and answers. Forget these PowerPoints and everything like that. So anyhow, that's the role of a consultant, is to, get the founder ready for presentation. I don't know how many times I've got on the phone with people. They want to pitch me on the phone. I say, wait a minute, I'm not your investor. You don't. I'm not going to, this is our first call. I don't want to hear a 45-minute business plan on the phone. Let's talk. So I try to walk them through a process. They want to pitch me their 45-minute business plan, and it just puts everybody to sleep. And that's what I tell them. Look, if we're going to get you in front of investors, you have to learn how to talk to investors, give investors what they want. Now, real quick, getting with a Reg D and a Reg A, there's some big differences with those. And when I say give the investors what they want, you have to look at what you're doing and what you're offering investors. With a Reg A, the investors put money into your deal, and they get free trading stock, which means they have a liquidity event immediately. So 6 months or a year from now, if they run into a pinch financially, they could sell their shares to somebody else. Not so with a Reg D. With a Reg D, all the shares you're selling to an investor are restricted for 12 months or longer, and you as the founder have to do a registration at some point to free up that stock. So you have to ask your question to yourself, what would be more enticing to an investor? A liquidity event now with free trading stock, or something with dead money where he puts his money and he can't get access to it if he runs into a problem? So those are some things a consultant can point out where I get calls from people, well, my friend did a Reg D because it's cheaper than a Reg A. Well, maybe it might be, but is that what the investor wanted, was restricted shares out of a Reg D? And has he raised any money? No, he hasn't raised his money yet. I mean, so again, this is where when we started this show right now, I wanted to cover the importance of a consultant. And I hope, the listeners take this to heart, that it's not an expense on their part. It's an investment. I mean, if you're going to go out and try to raise $1 million to $5 million or more, you've got to invest the time and the money to do it right. So, because as the old saying goes, you only get the one impression to make a good first impression. I mean,
absolutely.
You can't get in front of an investor group and blow it, and then want to have a second meeting with them. They're just not interested. So a consultant can help start you on the right foot.
Well, it gets back to that old saying about how much does it cost to do it, and then how much will it cost you not to do it. So everybody has to worry about that, right?
I tell people also. I said, you want to go cheap, hire an amateur, but then you're going to pay a lot more when the amateur screws it up. I had a client tell me the other day, your retainer is pretty expensive. It's way too much. I know people who do it cheaper. And I said, I've got clients that pay more.
Yeah.
And exactly. There was kind of dead silence on the phone then. But I mean, you get what you pay for. I tell people. Yeah.
Amateurs.
I mean, why do you think these big shot lawyers in New York and L.A. get $1,000 an hour or $5,000 an hour? It's because they know what the hell they're doing, and they have connections with other people you should know, such as people in the SEC or state regulators or CPAs, and so you pay top dollar to get access to top dollar people that can help you.
Yeah. Exactly correct.
Okay, last question, Mike. We talked about multiple consultants for a company. I'm sure there's a scenario where one consultant may have his bunch of lawyers and accountants, et cetera, where consultant B may have theirs. What happens if that kind of conflicts where the founder says, well, consultant A says to go to this guy, consultant B says to go with this guy. What do you do? Is this basically word of mouth and whatever you feel it?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I've been involved in transactions over the years where you bring in the wrong person. In other words, a consultant brings in a lawyer. The lawyer tells the client, look, you don't need to spend money with that consultant. I can do everything for you. You don't need to do that. Use him. Just use me. I mean, there are people like that. And there's no way to avoid that. And people, no matter what profession they're in, there's unscrupulous people, greedy people. As a consultant or whatever other profession you're in, if you're going to network with people and bring them to the table, you first need to know and trust and understand how they're going to handle things when you're not in the room. I mean, are they going to try to take the business out of your hand and do it all themselves? Are they going to work as a team, accountant, lawyer, consultant, work together? That's the consultant's job right there, is to bring in people that he trusts and works with. And when he's not on the phone or if he's not meeting with the client, he knows that CPA is not going to say, get rid of the lawyer, get rid of him, and just work through me, pay me all the money you were paying them, and we can get this done. I mean, that's going to happen if you're not careful.
Yeah, well, luckily for us here in Las Vegas, we don't have any greedy people here, so we don't have to worry about that.
Everybody loves everyone.
I'm sure.
I'm sure after listening to this podcast, people are going to have questions for you, Mike. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, they can email me. It's real simple. It's my name, Mike Brette, BRETTE @gmail.com. And they can call me, 951-236-8473. They can go to LinkedIn. I'm really active on LinkedIn. They can look at my profile, my services. They can even book an appointment, consultation with me. And again, 951-236-8473.
All right. Excellent. And so, Vicki, what do you think about this podcast? Got any extra questions or comments from Mike?
Well, I love doing podcasts with Mike because he puts out so much information in such a relatively small amount of time. But I will say this, though. Opening a small business, starting a business is not easy. It's not cheap, and it's not a quick overnight sensation. And not every person who has devised or invented the best widget or the best service possible knows how to do everything. And so there's a little bit of humility involved in understanding the concept that I can't do it. I need someone to help me, and it's okay to ask someone to help you, because if you hire a consultant, if you hire an advisor like Mike, then they're going to help you to think of and to make it through all of the stuff you didn't know how to do. And that's how you get to become a successful business. That's how you get to the next stage, to get your $200 million to take you to the next level. You can't do that unless you hire someone like Mike, who will guide you down the road and make it easier for you. So all I can say is, if you want to be a successful new business, you need to hire Mike, because he will help you absolutely with integrity.
And just to that point, I appreciate those comments, Vicki. And to that point, I tell people, look at Airbnb. They're in the real estate business, but they don't own any real estate. Look at Uber. Uber is in the rideshare transportation business, but they don't own any cars. How do you think both those companies got where they are today? The founders came up with an idea, but they couldn't execute to get them where they're at today. They needed help along the way in order to do their IPOs and get the business concept fleshed out. I mean, Uber was competing with all taxi cabs and everything. Now, taxi cabs are almost out of business because of Uber. And Airbnb is, really not, again, they don't own any real estate, but they're in the real estate business with rentals. So, again, I tell people, you can take a look at those. And, if you're in those industries, the consultant can help you work your way to success. If you're in some other business, the consultant can also help you work your way to success.
Right. Well, and plus, every industry has its own language. And that's another reason why you need an advisor, too, because they have a group of people, they have a team around them to represent all the aspects of what your new business needs. And they know the language, because if you can't speak the language of a lawyer or the language of a CPA, then they're more likely to not want to do business with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, Mike, I got to tell you, I have 14 yellow Post-it notes all around my office here, each one with a multi-million-dollar idea. So I expect to raise money for it real easily. Huh?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I tell people, look, if I could raise $10 million without laying any money out for legal fees, accounting fees, and marketing fees, I'd do it for myself. I wouldn't do it for anybody else.
Right. That's correct. Yes. So, all right. Well, listen, Mike, thanks for being a guest on the show today. Another great podcast.
Sure.
Thank you. Vicki, thanks for co-hosting this episode. And folks, you're listening to the Mappable USA podcast at mappableusa.com. If you go to that website, scroll down, you'll see all our syndication sources. Just pick the one you like best, subscribe, and you'll never miss another one of our episodes. And if you want to be a guest on the show like Mike was today, there's a guest tab there. Fill that out. We'll see what we can do about getting you on the show. And if you like what you heard today, send us an email at info@mappableiusa.com, or just leave a comment on whatever page you're listening to us on right now. So thanks for listening. Thanks for your support. We'll see you next time with another Mappable USA podcast. Have a good week, everyone.